Pompeii, the day the sky fell. Chapter 1. A normal morning in paradise. Before Pompeii became a graveyard, it was alive. The streets were crowded. Bakers were preparing bread. Merchants opened their shops. Wine flowed from taverns. Children moved through narrow streets while wealthy Romans stepped out from elegant villas decorated with mosaics and frescoes. This was Pompeii, a prosperous city on the Bay of Naples, surrounded by vineyards, farmland, and the spectacular silhouette of Mount Vesuvius. An amphitheater stood at the edge of the city. Public baths filled with conversation, fountains supplied water, temples rose above busy streets, and thousands of people went about their daily lives, completely unaware that the mountain above them was about to change everything. Vesuvius did not look like the monster we imagine today. It was simply part of the landscape, but beneath its slopes, enormous forces were building. Then, sometime in the autumn of 79 CE, the earth began to move. At first, it may have seemed like another earthquake. Then came something impossible to ignore. The mountain exploded. Chapter 2. The Wrath of Vesuvius. Pliny the Younger was there. He was stationed at Misenum, across the Bay of Naples, when he saw something rising above Vesuvius, a colossal cloud. He compared its shape to a pine tree, a massive column rising into the sky before spreading outward at the top. This was the beginning of one of the most devastating volcanic eruptions in recorded history. Ash and volcanic gases surged high into the atmosphere. Then came pumice. It began falling over Pompeii like a deadly rain. At first, people may have watched in disbelief. Then the streets began to fill. Roofs started collapsing beneath the growing weight. Daylight disappeared. The sky turned black. Imagine standing in a Roman street and watching the sun vanish. There was no modern warning system, no evacuation plan, no emergency broadcasts, only fear. Some residents fled immediately, others stayed behind, perhaps believing the worst would pass. But Vesuvius was not finished. As the eruption continued, enormous columns of ash and gas became unstable. They collapsed, and when they did, they produced something far more deadly than falling stones: pyroclastic currents, a turbulent mixture of superheated gas. These were not ordinary clouds, they were lethal flows. They raced down the volcano's slopes and across the surrounding landscape. For anyone caught in their path, there was almost no chance of escape. The final moments were brutally fast. A person could be alive one moment and overwhelmed by a wave of scorching volcanic material the next. Pompeii was buried. Herculaneum suffered an even more direct assault. And across the Bay of Naples, Pliny the Younger watched the disaster unfold. His uncle, Pliny the Elder, commander of the Roman fleet, sailed toward the eruption, not merely out of curiosity, but to assist people attempting to escape. He would not survive. In his letters, Pliny the Younger preserved one of the most extraordinary eyewitness accounts of an ancient natural disaster. But his words tell only part of the story. The ruins would tell the rest. Chapter 3. Frozen in Time. For centuries, Pompeii disappeared. The city was buried beneath layers of volcanic ash and pumice. Its streets vanished, its buildings disappeared, and the voices of its inhabitants fell silent. Then, centuries later, excavation began, and something extraordinary happened. The dead city began to speak. A bakery, a tavern, a public fountain, political graffiti, children's writing scratched into plaster, frescoes still carrying their brilliant colors, loaves of bread preserved inside ovens. Everyday objects abandoned exactly where people had left them. Pompeii was not simply preserving monuments, it was preserving ordinary life. And then came one of archaeology's most haunting discoveries. Human bodies had decomposed inside hardened volcanic deposits, leaving cavities in the ash. Archaeologists eventually learned to fill those cavities with plaster. The result was devastating. A final gesture, a curled body, a person attempting to protect themselves, the shape of clothing, the impression of a human being caught in the final moments of their life. These plaster casts are not statues. They are negative spaces left by people who died nearly 2,000 years ago, and that is what makes Pompeii different from almost any other ancient city. Rome gives us emperors, Egypt gives us pharaohs, but Pompeii gives us people. Not just the powerful, but the baker, the merchant, the child, the prisoner, the traveler, the ordinary Roman who expected to wake up the next morning. Instead, their world ended beneath the shadow of a volcano. Today, Vesuvius still stands above the Bay of Naples, quiet, beautiful, and active. Pompeii reminds us that history is not always shaped by armies or emperors. Sometimes, history arrives as a cloud on the horizon, and sometimes, the most powerful window into the ancient world is not a palace. It is a street, a loaf of bread, a message scratched into a wall, a human silhouette frozen in ash. Pompeii did not choose to become a time capsule. Nature created it by destroying it, and nearly 2,000 years later, we are still walking through the final day of a city that never knew it was living through history.